Steve, when I got my dog a few years ago,
Yeah.
I had a serious concern. And that concern was, am I going to have what it takes to take this dog outside every single day and get it an exercise, rain or snow, sunshine, hot, heat, summer, all the things, right? And it was a challenge. I got him in the early summer and it was really, really hot that first few months. And I was out there every day and there was a lot of shade where I was at and whatever. And then it got to be winter and it was freezing cold. But I quickly learned that the consequences of not taking him outside to run around every day were all the motivation that I would need.
Uh-huh.
And I did not take my dog outside today.
Oh, no. What happened?
And I am paying the price. I'm paying the price. So I've got a 3-year-old whippet. So as far as dogs go, they are pretty far on the couch potato side of things. Much less energy than a working dog might have. But they are runners. They are sprinters. And if they don't get that running, man, it's irritating. So basically, we don't need to talk about it. That's all. I just say I have no choice. I must take my dog outside to sprint no matter the weather every day if I want my sanity. So I guess that concern resolved itself. Your dog's a little older, right? I don't know if you face this issue or not.
Yeah. My dog is 7, 8, something like that.
Nice.
So she likes to run, but if I just take her on a brisk walk, that's good enough once or twice a day.
Oh, yeah.
Although the little dog that we're fostering right now seems to have more energy and also is not quite as well house trained as the older one is. So if I don't take him out at least once or twice a day, we'll have accidents around the house.
Oh, that's no fun. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've really, really enjoyed raising a puppy and having this kind of young dog. It's a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But, I will also love when he's 5+ years old and just a little, a little calmer, and it is, I love watching him run too. It's a sight to behold. And yeah, with regard to the walks, a walk does nothing for him, apparently. I could walk him for 45 minutes and we get home and he's like, hey, time to run. I'm like, no. Wow. So I have to take him to a field where he can be off leash and just sprint for 20 or 30 minutes and then I'm golden. But
wow. Okay. How do you play fetch or something to get him to do the running, or how do you get him?
Yep. We play fetch, which took him for some reason a long, long time to learn. But even better, if there's another dog at the park that likes to play chase, that's where the real action is.
Okay.
All out sprinting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, on with the show.
Hello there, dear listener. I am Steve.
And I'm Tyler. Welcome to another episode of It's Not About the Money, the podcast where we help you gain the clarity you need to never buy a dog and to run a successful small business.
Tyler has a financial coaching practice and one dog. I run a tax business and have one dog and a foster at the moment. We are both small business owners like you, and this podcast is our exploration of entrepreneurship, one episode at a time. And I promise we don't talk about dogs all the time, but it does come up. I think that's it for today, though, because we're going to talk about YNAB Rule 3.
It's a big part of life, dogs and kids. I don't have any kids, so I have a dog. I don't know what to say. Okay, moving on though. Yes. YNAB Rule number 3. Well, by now we've talked about YNAB Rule number 1, which is give every dollar a job, and YNAB Rule number 2, which is to embrace your true expenses, both of which lead to and enable you to follow YNAB Rule number 3, which is roll with the punches, which is a boxing metaphor.
Can you explain to me? I am not a sports person. I do not. I've heard the term and I know it comes from boxing, but I don't know what it means. What does it mean?
Well, I on YNAB's YouTube channel, Hannah made a joke once that I thought was kind of funny. Basically, she's like, there aren't many areas where contacts or combat sports intersect with personal finance, but we found the one. This is it. Yeah, and I'm not a boxing fan either, but it's a pretty basic idea. So, if someone's going to punch you in the face, the idea is that you want to move in the direction that they're throwing the punch,
Hmm.
simply because it reduces the impact of the punch, right? So,
That makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it's a pretty apt description for this rule, which is about reducing the impact of change in your life and therefore your money.
Because change will happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
your fault, and sometimes it's just that's what happens in the world. Things change.
Right. Right. And I guess if you want to follow this analogy even further, sometimes life just smacks you in the face, with an unexpected, unpleasant thing.
Uh-huh.
And this rule is about how to, I guess, be resilient in your personal finances and how not to stress out when that happens. Because, you know, one of the biggest reasons people quit budgeting and just go back to their old ways in personal finance is that they aren't very good at predicting the future and they get frustrated when things don't go according to plan. And this is YNAB's answer to that. It's their understanding of human nature and their suggestion for how to avoid getting frustrated and quitting, I think, is a big part of it. So I've got a question for you, Steve. In my experience, people often feel guilty when they change their budget. And I'm curious if I don't know, have you ever experienced that or felt that way? Or if not, why do you think people would feel guilty when they change their budget?
Uh, I think this is not a big problem for me, although Shanae does have this, and it makes YNAB a little difficult for her to understand because I'm very adept at rolling with the punches, and she would like to know
Uh-huh.
what was the original plan, and then how did we
Oh,
measure up to the plan? Where I'm just
yeah.
like, things happened, and and here we are at the end of the month. Here's what the new numbers look like, and I've
Right.
lost her because the context is gone of, well, where did we start from? I understand this is where we are now, but
Right.
yeah. So I don't feel like I have that hang up personally,
Okay.
but I
Well,
someone that I
that's
love very
nice.
much does, and so I kind of
Right.
understand where she's coming from.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. For me, this was more of a problem when I used to try to budget in a spreadsheet that I made myself
Mm.
and didn't have some of the magic of the YNAB software in it. So it was actually hard to be flexible because it was all kind of either hard coded or it involved updating a spreadsheet. And who's got time for that
That makes
when life
sense.
is happening, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of the reasons people feel guilty about it, they feel like they've made a commitment to themselves that they are now breaking. I
Mm.
promise I will only spend $200 this month on groceries, which is a very ambitious promise to make to yourself. And then, because you're trying to spend less money or save more money or whatever it is, and when you fail to do that, it feels like a failure, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand where that's
There
coming
was a
from.
time in my life where I could spend $200 a month on groceries, but that was a long time ago, and I did
Right,
not
right.
have any other family to take care of at the time.
And I might say it's surprising how little you can spend on groceries when you spend your money eating out instead.
Yes, that's true.
Well, the reason I mentioned groceries specifically in that example is that's actually, in my experience, that is, well, both groceries and eating out, food in general, that is an area that people tend to grossly underestimate how much they spend.
Mm-hmm. And it also tends to be a very large category in the budget
Uh-huh.
generally, and so it's
Yeah.
easy to think, well, I could trim that down a little bit this month. Let's try and bump it down to what, 500 or something. And then,
Right.
but really just saying that number in the budget doesn't change the behavior by itself. You also it's kind of you have to
Right.
that one specifically, you have to come at it a different way of how are we going to reduce the food spending, like meal planning or whatever,
Yeah.
planning ahead, meal prep, whatever it might be, so that the effect will be we spend less money rather than trying to say this is the amount of money we are going to spend and that's the end of it without changing the
Ooh.
behavior.
Yeah, that's a cool insight actually. And I think that might be another reason that people feel guilty sometimes when they have to change their budget, is not just because they weren't able to keep a commitment they made to themselves, but actually it's frustrating that we can't just snap our fingers and change some of these deeply rooted behaviors just by typing a number into a spreadsheet. Like,
Right.
there's more to it. There's more to it than that, right? And I think YNAB rule number 3 plays really well with the first 2 rules, because it basically is rule 1 again, giving every dollar a job. You're just changing the job of the dollar,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
Moving it between budget categories. And you're only able to do that if you've been following rule 2 even just a little bit, so that you've got money in budget categories that you don't need immediately to pay for stuff.
Right.
You've built a little bit of a buffer, and you've created these little pools of money that you can draw on when plans change and move
Right.
from category to category. So in the view of YNAB, in their methodology, in the world of YNAB, I should say, not only is it okay to change your budget, but it's actually considered smart. It's a really good thing to do. And there's a couple of reasons why I kind of want to talk those through with you.
Yes, I have a guess maybe, but I'd
What's your
hear it.
guess?
We humans are terrible at predicting the future, and so you might have what you think will happen, but that's not actually what's going to happen. So
Yeah.
matching your maybe this is more the point. Matching your budget to reality is really where you get the clarity of if your budget's just aspirational, head in the clouds, and not tied to what's actually happening. It's not going to be useful to you. But if reality is not matching up with your predictions, let's get the budget to match reality so that you understand in hard numbers what's going on.
Oh, that's exactly right. That's one of the primary reasons, I think. The way I think of it is that rolling with the punches, it helps your budget become more honest or more accurate, I guess, right?
Yeah.
So, because if you've never budgeted before or paid attention to your personal finances, pretty much all of your budgeting is going to be based on nothing. Like guesses, essentially, right? Like, here's how much I think I want to spend on travel or groceries or whatever. I mean, you've got the exceptions. You've got your hard monthly bills, your mortgage, your utility bills, things like that you can make a very, you either know the amount or have a very educated guess. But on everything else, you're just like picking a number, right? And so it's actually really common. One of the exercises I like to do with my clients is we'll sit down before we do anything, and they'll make a list of all the budget categories they want, everything they want to spend money on. And then I'll have them, this is not even in YNAB, I'll just have them listed out, maybe in a spreadsheet or on a piece of paper, and say, okay, cool, there's everything you want to spend money on or that you think you need to spend money on. And now I'll list when is the next time that you're going to have to pay for that thing and how much will be due at that time, or how much you want to save for that time. And that basically generates a list of like all of what they want to spend money on and how much it's going to cost. And very, very often, almost always, that number is way higher than their monthly income. And it's like this moment where they're like, oh.
Yeah.
And so that's okay. Like, I still encourage them to put all those targets on those budget categories. And like, they're going to have to work through rule 1 and give every dollar a job until they're out of dollars, right? And that's where you get into those really interesting conversations about what are your values, your priorities. So yeah, the first big reason that it's smart to change your budget is it helps you be more honest and realistic about your true spending. And secondly, the fact of the matter is your priorities change all the time, and so do your circumstances, which means not only is changing your budget smart, not changing it is stupid. I guess, right? Because it's like failing to acknowledge like the fundamental reality of life, that you are in flux and so are your circumstances.
Yeah. Okay. So circumstances changing is very intuitive to me. I hadn't thought about how your priorities are changing all the time too, but that makes sense. Like, friend calls you up and says, I'm in town, can we grab lunch? And I hadn't budgeted for lunch, but I would like to see that friend. And so now my priority is, yes, I want to make this happen, but I didn't think about it on February 1st when I wrote this budget. So what are we going to do? We're going to move some money around.
Right. Yep. And that's a perfect example of rolling with the punches. And it's worth pointing out that you can do it one of two ways. You can roll with the punches before you have the expense or after the fact. And so in that exact scenario that you just outlined, doing it before would be, between the time that your friend calls you and the time that you actually go to lunch, you look into your budget. You notice I don't have a budget category for eating out with friends or whatever, or maybe I'm out of money in my eating out category.
Mm-hmm.
And before you go out, you're like, well, I'll just borrow $20 from the groceries category or from some other category. You actually move the money in your budget before you go make the expense, right?
Yeah.
And that's like, I would say ideal, but not required. Because now you have an idea when you go out to eat, you actually have like made a decision about how much you want to spend at the restaurant. And you can kind of let that guide your behavior a little bit. But, let's say you forget to do that, short notice, whatever. You forget. You can also roll with the punches after. What that will look like in your budget is you'll have an overspent notification in that budget category, and YNAB will prompt you to cover that overspending with money from some other category.
Right. I have done it both ways for different circumstances.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Same. Yes. But that was such a cool example because it is a perfect example of how priorities can change at a moment's notice, right? I mean, you've got your budget, you're feeling great about your plan, the progress you're going to make. But in that moment, do you value the relationship or your budget as currently constituted more, right? And there's not even a right answer to that. I mean, you might decide like, actually, my wife and I are really working on this other savings goal. And like, I'm going to have to say no, or I'll bring a bag lunch or something. That's fine too. Right?
Yeah.
But the point is you're thinking about it.
Right. And through all of that, it's about what you want to do with the resources you have. It's not somebody telling you what you ought to do here. This is the whole point. That's one thing I love about the YNAB rules is it's a framework for thinking about what are your priorities, your values, what trade-offs do you want to make with the limited resources that you have at the moment.
Yeah. Which is like so empowering.
Yeah.
It switches the mentality potentially from like a victim mentality to a in charge mentality, right? It's like, I don't know. It has the potential to do that anyway. It's really powerful. And because of that, actually, because of the way it impacts your mindset, I think that's why it's so effective at just about every level I can think of a person's financial journey, right? Like you and I are lucky in that we've been doing the YNAB method for a long time. And so we've been experiencing the benefits of these rules for a long time. And we're like it's never ending journey, I suppose, right? But like we've realized many of the benefits, right? But for someone who's at the very beginning and doesn't even have enough money to cover the current month's or maybe even the current week's expenses, Rule 1 still works and it's still powerful. And it can still give you a mindset that's going to make you succeed in the long run. I just love that. So I love what you said just then so much. I want to kind of restate it maybe in a different way and see what you think about this. So you can do anything you want in your budget as long as you can answer the question, where is the money going to come from?
Yeah, I like that framing.
You still have to have the money, but as long as you can answer the question, where is it going to come from, you can do it. And having a budget lets you answer that question. Not having a budget, you don't know how to answer that question typically. Won't stop you from doing the thing most of the time, probably, but it might get you into some trouble.
Right. I could go buy a boat if I wanted to, as long as I can answer the question, where is the money going to come from? I don't want to buy a boat.
And that could be in the form of, like, I don't know how much it costs to finance a boat or what kind of boat or whatever, but like, it doesn't have to be the full cost of the boat. You could just be like, can I afford a $300 a month payment based on my budget as presently constituted? If you can find the money, you can do it.
I have no interest in a boat, by the way. That was a totally hypothetical
Do you even live
example.
Near water?
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Yeah, there's a lake nearby-ish. Not super nearby. But a boat. Then you got to store it somewhere. You got to repair it.
Yeah.
You got to make sure it stays seaworthy. I'm not interested. Too much.
I hear the thing to do is to make friends with people who have a boat.
Oh, there you go.
That's the best option.
Okay. I got to get on that.
Yeah. So I do think one of the things about there's some pitfalls to Rule 3. Not really pitfalls. That's a little bit dramatic, but um, let's just say, or let's pose the question: do you think it's possible to roll with the punches too much? Like we've just been talking about how it's actually smart. You should change your budget as your circumstances and as your priorities change. Can that be overdone? What do
Yeah.
you think?
Like if I said, oh, well, there's $5,000 here in the property taxes budget. It's only June. I still have 6 months before this is due.
Mhm.
We can buy a new computer today. Is that kind of what you're thinking?
You
I
can.
mean,
I mean, no,
I
yeah,
could do that, but the danger there, I think, is it's not clear just from that framing whether there will be enough income between now and June to make up the difference. Like,
right.
yes, the money is sitting there in that category, but it's because that's its job. But whether there will be enough to replace it before the thing comes due is a separate question.
It's a separate question and one that YNAB stays away from answering, right? They don't get into they don't allow you to
Right.
forecast, right? Future income. So, which is why it's important, I guess. So, to answer my own question, I think, yeah, it is based on your example, it's pretty clear to me that you can roll with the punches too much. And the way you would know is if you are getting thrown, if you're not accomplishing what you want to accomplish
Yeah.
with your money. If you find yourself continually like, uh, giving way to impulsive things that are derailing your longer term goals. But that's why it's so important to
Okay.
stick with to also use this in conjunction with Rule 2, right? About embracing your true expenses, because you answered the question, where's the money for the computer going to come from? It's going to come from the property taxes. But now you've created another problem
Right.
for yourself,
The property taxes
and
still got to get paid.
yeah. And you might be able to pull that money from an emergency fund account, and but eventually you'll get to the bottom,
Uh huh.
and there'll be nowhere else to take
You got
from,
to
I
pay the
guess. But
piper somewhere.
yeah, yep. So forgive me for this, but I feel like there's a tie-in with the getting things done method. We did a book review of that, getting things done by David Allen.
Oh, okay. I love both of these things.
Yes,
Go on.
and one of the key principles underlying the getting things done method, I think, that I took away from it, is part of the power of that methodology is that you are conscious of, very aware of the things you are choosing not to do. So like you capture all your responsibilities and your obligations and inputs and all that thing, but then you make decisions about, because it's captured, it's not going to fall between the cracks, and you have a list, like a physical list of all the things that you are not doing, and in addition to all the things that you are doing. And so you're making mental trade-offs, and that's where the stress-free productivity comes from. Is
Mm-hmm.
like being aware of and consciously deciding what not to do, just as much as you're deciding what to do. And I think this roll with the punches and well, the whole YNAB methodology is kind of the same thing, right? It's like, by choosing to have more of X in my budget, I know that I am choosing to have less of Y. And I'm okay with that. I'm not stressed about it. I'm not sad about it, because that was my choice. It was my priority.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a stretch, but I see a tie in there.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Because it all comes back to the making the trade-offs with the finite resources you have. What
Yeah,
what
the opportunity
what
cost, I
matters to you?
guess.
Yeah, opportunity cost. There you go. Yeah.
So, Steve, since we've been talking about rolling with the punches, I want to mention a feature in the YNAB software that's pretty handy when it comes to this. First of all, YNAB makes it very, very easy to roll with the punches. It makes sense. They built their software to like enable you to follow their method, right? So it's very easy to move money from one category to another. It's very easy to cover overspending in one category with money that's available from another category. And more recently, they released a feature that allows you to view a history of all of your rolling with the punches.
Okay. Recent moves, is that the one?
Yeah, so if you click on recent moves and then filter it down just to moved, all the transactions that are moving money, you can
Oh.
see all the pilfering that you
Oh,
may or may
yeah.
not have
Okay.
done between budget categories.
Yes, so mine looks like the end of the month came around and we were doing a bunch of after the fact rolling with the punches. And there
Uh-huh.
it all is. That's fascinating. Okay. Hmm.
One that sticks out to me in mine is this month I moved some money from a category that I have called stuff I forgot to budget for
Oh, okay.
into my entertainment category. I had someone invited me to go to a movie, but I had already spent all of my entertainment money for the month on going to a play. But it was important to me to hang out with this friend, so I did it.
Yeah.
I rolled with the punches, and then apparently my Spotify went up by 2 cents. Apparently, so I had to borrow I had to steal 2 cents from another category. That's annoying. Anyway, it's a useful feature. You can kind of like, I could probably do a better job with this. I don't do that. I don't do this. I've never really done a retrospective on a month from the perspective of rolling with the punches. That is fascinating. I should do that.
Yeah, I didn't realize that this was all so clearly laid out here. Because I knew you could go in, like each category has the little icon next to it in the assigned column that shows you the moves within that category. But I've never looked at it all aggregated like this.
Yeah, it's like
very interesting.
It's kind of like I don't know if you use Venmo, but you know how some people just like make all their transactions public, and so you can kind of like scroll through the feed.
I've
and like,
never understood the motivation there, but yes.
Neither have I. I just find it weirdly fascinating.
Right.
But this is like doing that, but for yourself.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, that's a little pro tip, I guess, that I need to apply myself.
All right.
I'd be interested to see what patterns I find. Like, am I always like, I actually purposely have that category stuff I forgot to budget for to cover like smaller rolling with the punches event, things that under 25 or $50 or something that just come up in a month that I don't want to make a different category for or something. But I'll be curious to see as I move forward with this, like, am I always stealing from certain categories to fund another category? And if so, why don't I just change my target for that category so I don't have to keep doing that,
Right. In the service of becoming more honest with, like, reflecting reality.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. If you're consistently overspending in a category, you really only have two choices. You can budget more or spend less. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
So, and both are fine.
Both are fine. But acknowledging the reality of what's actually happening is the first step there.
Yeah. Very cool.
Cool.
Are there any that stick out to you on your little list?
Eating out almost always goes over. Well, so eating out is an interesting maybe example here where a while ago we sat down and said we would like to spend less on eating out, but we can't just change the number in the budget and expect that to happen by itself. We have to think through what would that look like for us to spend less on eating out. And it came down to, like, we can go out to this sort of a restaurant every 2 weeks, and we can take the kids to get this treat this frequently, and then we can do a date night here. Those kind of, like, spelling out, these are the sorts of places we can go, and this is the frequency. And that worked for a time. As evidenced by the category going over again. But coming at it from that angle of what should the behavior, we would like to get to this target, but what does the behavior need to look like to get there? That was a much more useful way of doing it than just, I would like to spend less on groceries this month, so let's just move this number down, which I've also done in the past, and it doesn't work, as you said.
Right. That's actually a huge takeaway I'm getting from this conversation is I love that you brought that planning element into this, because just changing the number in the budget doesn't make it so. I mean, ideally it would, but for that to work, you'd have to be checking your budget really faithfully and diligently before spending, which is a habit that you should develop anyway. But
yeah, and with some of my budget categories, I do it that way. But these other ones where, like, it, we're not in that habit for that, and so, and that's not going to be the when we're deciding whether or not to go out to eat. It's not, let's look at the budget and see if there's money there. It's friends invited us out, or the kids are hungry, or I don't feel like cooking, or we're on the way to this other activity and everybody's hungry, and those are the things that influence the decision. So then if we have the framework of, have we already gone out this many times? Can we do it today? And yes, today's the day. Let's go ahead and do it, or whatever. That was more useful for us.
Yeah. It's worth calling out though that even though like maybe you're not in this specific example, you're not able or not checking the budget before spending because those decisions are being driven by other factors. You still are rolling with the punches. You're just doing it after the fact in those cases.
Yeah, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because, you're getting the money from somewhere, obviously.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Yep. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, that was a pretty fun discussion about rolling with the punches. I think this is one of the more fun rules to talk about because it acknowledges like the reality of life. And introducing a little bit of lightheartedness and humor into it really helps people, I think, kind of overcome some of the stress and anxiety and guilt, that comes from, not being able to just control their behavior with the snap of a finger. But it's more of a process and a learning process.
Yeah, it's a muscle you have to build to
definitely
get good at sticking to a budget. Well, I don't even like that term, sticking to the budget. It's more like,
ew, yeah, wash your mouth out with soap.
Or like I've made this plan and these are my priorities until I change them.
Right.
And I will have good reasons when I do. And so that's okay. Let's make it possible to operate that way.
And back to that food example, it actually was it was relatively recently, like the beginning of this year actually, that I finally acknowledged that I need to budget more for groceries and eating out. Because I was always very aspirational in those budget categories for myself. And I was always rolling with the punches for those. And so finally, I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to budget. I don't even remember what it was. Maybe like $50 more a week. Or no. Not a week. Anyway, I figured out what it was. I raised my target amounts. I remember what it was. So instead of budgeting for those categories once per month, I do the weekly targets.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Weekly targets, which is like really cool because then it allows me to track it a little bit more carefully throughout the month, kind of visually in the software anyway. And I upped that. And you know what? Like, I should have done it a lot earlier because I feel a lot better about my budget now. And I'm able, quote unquote, to stay on budget now. Right. So again, did the behavior really change? No. But I think I acknowledged a reality of like what, my budget revealed to me maybe a true priority that I didn't realize. Like, what am I trying to say? I thought it was a priority to be really frugal on some of these eating out things and groceries. It was just too low though. In reality, I value my time and energy spent elsewhere, I guess, is what I'm learning about myself. And so by adjusting that in my budget, it's been a much more positive experience.
Okay, interesting. And you got that peace of mind not from changing your behavior, but from letting the reality reflect back into your budget.
Yeah, like acknowledging the truth, basically, about what I want, right? Because if it was really important to me to eat rice and beans all the time so I could have a couple extra bucks or like 100 or 200 extra bucks to save towards my emergency fund or something, then I would do it, I think. Right. But I've proved to myself so many times that actually I value I actually added an entirely new budget category. I think I mentioned in a previous episode too, called Meals on Me, because I just had to, I acknowledge, like, it's important for me once in a while to be able to take a friend or a family member to lunch, like for their birthday or for a special occasion, and that wasn't anywhere in my budget. It was just coming out of those other food categories, which would make me go over, right? So I guess, I'm actually spending more money than I used to. Well, or similar. I'm spending more money than I used to wish I was spending on eating out, but I'm happier because I'm actually living my values and I'm acknowledging those values in my budget. And that took me a long time to work through, and I should probably be in therapy. I don't know. But it feels good now. It's alignment. You're aligning with your values and I don't know.
Yeah, very cool. The words that I did not expect to hear in this episode were honesty and alignment. But I think they characterize this really well. That's what we're looking for in the budget. Reflecting reality.
Yeah, reflecting reality. And like, really learning more about yourself, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that whole spiel I just gave, like I learned something about myself that I didn't think was true, but that turned out to be true, which is fascinating to me. Well, how existential.
This was fun. So
Yeah, this is great.
we'll see if rule 4 is this personal or not. You'll have to wait until the next episode to find out.
Yeah, we don't even know at this point. So,
Cool. Thanks, Tyler. This has been fun.
of course, thanks to you.
You can email us hello@notaboutmoney.com, and we will see you on the next episode.